Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. And no, we are not back at Big Daddy Studios. We've just got a backdrop now that looks kind of similar to what we had up there.
Yep.
But again, we do want to thank them for all they've done for the program, and kind of wish we could have continued with them, but circumstances beyond our control, beyond their control as well, just kind of dictated that they couldn't do it anymore.
Yep.
But thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it, and let's just press on from here.
Yeah, that's right. All right. Like I said last week, the show must go on. So let's see. We're going to start off with a legislative update.
Oh, yes, we are.
Yes.
One of our favorite things to do here at FAIRtax Power Radio is to keep our eye on Congress.gov so we can see, how many different tax proposals and tax favors that the Congress critters are selling to the lobbyists up there. Our favorite one is back.
Yes.
Apparently this did not make law out of the last Congress, but we have just discovered that on, let's see, this is May 10th as we're recording this. This was introduced yesterday, S 1396. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to modify the definition of municipal solid waste. Thank you, Debbie Stabenow, and 5 co-sponsors. Now, I tried to look up the text on this. It's not ready. I want to see what they're actually trying to do with this thing.
Well, it wasn't ready the last time. I mean, it was last year that we did this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't ready. There was no text to it. But what does municipal solid waste have to do with the tax code?
My guess is that somebody gets a tax break for handling it, and now they got to try to figure out exactly what if you're handling this material or this material or this material, you'll get a tax break. So who knows?
You weren't sure,
hopefully we'll get some text on it and figure it out.
If you were still in doubt that the income tax, the federal income tax, you didn't think it reached into every aspect of American life, all right? It's even there with the poop patrol.
Yeah, well, I'm guessing.
So now I know you have some other ones there.
Oh yeah, there's another one. This is S 1370. Bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to treat certain military survivor benefits as earned income for the purposes of the kiddie tax. We mentioned that on our last program, but this particular one apparently is companion legislation in the Senate because it was introduced just a couple of days ago, well after our last recording day.
Okay.
So we're talking about kiddie taxes and municipal solid waste, and I found one more that is almost going to, in fact, this one is going to make the favorites list. Scroll down a little bit. There it is. This is S 1291. 1291. A bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to provide a reduced excise tax rate for, I didn't realize these guys had a lobby, portable electronically aerated bait cases. That is in Congress as we speak. And our buddy Marco Rubio put that one.
Yes, not surprisingly, that's from Florida here, where fishing is a large industry, sport fishing. So apparently that's a big deal. Well, anything you want to put in the tax code, you just find the right congressman or senator and, with a little bit of extra campaign cash, you too can modify the tax code, or at least you can attempt to.
Well, maybe that's why Rubio backed out on supporting the fair tax. He wants to do some of this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Marco, we're watching you.
Yeah, I'm not too happy about that, Senator Rubio. But, and there's one, like the first one that I saw on my screen here is to increase the limitation on the deduction for state and local taxes. Yeah, the high tax states are still reeling from that change in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act.
Yeah, they're trying to fix the thing that was the end-all, be-all, fix everything bill when they were selling it to us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was going to fix everything. So, anyways. So, let's move on to today's subject, which is the fair tax.
Of course. There's one more thing I want to toss in real quick. As we were talking about last week, the movement to drop the fair tax and just start over again, try to get national retail sales taxes. And one of the things that was in there, I wish I'd have thought about this last time. They were saying, ask a bunch of people about the fair tax and they'll have no idea what that is. But ask them what a sales tax is. Oh yeah, they know what that is, and then accept the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
I'm going to try something on you.
Oh,
Ron. Do you know what a GP40-2 is?
A GP40-2.
You may be able to guess based on what you know my interests are, but
I haven't the vaguest idea.
We will not do any more GP40-2s. We will now just build railroad locomotives.
Oh, okay.
So, see the
number.
Yeah, we got to know that. So the fair tax is a sales tax. It's just a very specific type. So you say, well, I haven't heard of this one little specific type one, but I've heard of the big, broad, general category. That just really doesn't work any more than it does with railroad locomotives.
Yeah,
but our number here, as of we're recording this on May 10th, exactly 600 proposed changes to the tax code, or at least that's the number of hits you get if you search on the string Internal Revenue Code within the search function on Congress.gov. 600 exactly. And how many days they have been?
53. Today is their, by my count, their 53rd day that the House has been in session. So that works out to a little over 11 proposals per day to change the tax code.
11.32.
It's just amazing. All right, we need something that's a lot simpler, folks, a lot simpler, and something that Congress can't play around with. So, and that of course,
so no
is
more
the fair
breaks
tax.
for electronically aerated bait cases. Or kitty taxes or municipal solid. That's insane. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to ask you guys to kind of put on your imagination caps here for a while. Let's just imagine that we are now living in a country, that we have always lived in a country where there is no income tax. What would your life look like under the fair tax? You want to try
Very different, very different. And we're talking about the last chapter in the Red Book. All right?
Yes, this is the red book. So you got that one over there.
Yep.
This is the second of the two FAIRtax books that Neil Bortz and John Linder wrote. And at the back of it, they were talking about our vision for tomorrow. So we're going to kind of borrow from this, if we might. Just imagine that you live in a place where every payday you've been getting your complete paycheck. No deductions, no withholding for income tax, no payroll taxes for Social Security and Medicare, which means if you earn $2,000 a week, you get a check for $2,000 a week.
Yeah. By the way, I've never earned $2,000 a week.
Yeah, apparently Bortz and Linder have, but we haven't. But, there will be no distinction between what you earn and your take-up pay. Does that sound good? Or take-home pay? Does that sound good?
Yeah, take-home pay would be, well, what do you mean take-home? This is how much I earn. This is how much I get.
Throughout your work life, whenever you earn a raise, or if you change jobs and get a higher salary, you never have to figure out how much of that raise or how much of your new paycheck you get to keep and how much the government takes away from you.
Now think of how many times that happens, okay? I got a raise at work. I wonder how much of it I'm actually going to get. Is that going to put me in another tax bracket and make it not worthwhile having the raise?
Yes, I mean, there have been cases where your raise puts you in another tax bracket, which means the government takes a bigger chunk of withholding and you bring home less than you did. When you make less, you bring home more.
Your
that only
raise,
makes sense in the swamp.
Your raise goes to the government. And Congress is very thankful. Actually, they're not, but anyways. But yeah, that actually happens now under this current income tax system. But under the fair tax, if you've lived under the fair tax, that's never happened. It would be a completely foreign concept.
Okay, imagine never having to save receipts or create any record keeping pertaining to federal taxes. The only receipt you need is the one for that ugly dress that your husband bought you so you can return it when he's not looking. Bortz does have a sense of humor. He does.
Yeah. So no receipt unless you want to. I mean, I use a home accounting system so I can take a look. For instance, how much if you have a used car and it seems like you're putting more money into it every month because you keep having issues with it. Well, and you want to keep receipts and you want to keep track of, maybe it's time to trade in this car because payments on a new car would be about the same as if you want to track your expenses, you can keep all the receipts, but you don't have to keep any receipts for the federal government to do your taxes. All right, that would never happen under the fair tax.
All right, you will always be able to invest what you earn without first having to pay federal taxes on it. So every time you have money left over at the end of the month, that does happen on occasions.
Yeah.
You'll be able to put that money into a savings account or some other investment, and that money will never be taxed, nor will the interest you earn on it be taxed as long as it is saved or in your investment. You only get taxed when you spend it.
Yeah, and this is very important for people who are just getting by. Let's say you've got a young family, mom and dad and a couple of kids, and they're living in an apartment, they're just getting started and so forth, and they're trying to save up for a house. And so they're trying to save up for a down payment on a house, which could be 10, 15, 20%, who knows. They can save faster because none of the interest on those savings or investments is going to be subject to tax because there will be no income tax. So just imagine living under the fair tax in which you don't have to worry about the tax you'll pay on the interest on your savings and investments. Never happened.
Of course, the good thing is savings and investments is good for the economy.
Absolutely.
So if you want to do something that's good for the economy, don't tax savings and investments.
Yeah.
The more you tax something, the less you get of it.
And watch the economy grow.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Now this happens too. When your parents die, they will leave you everything they have, just as just as their parents did for them. That's what that says.
Yep.
That's written awfully close to the paper. No taxes due on that. Okay, and you know that you'll be able to leave whatever you've earned and accumulated to whomever you wish without any tax consequences. You'll never know the death of a loved one to be a taxable event. Oh, and they don't get your retirement savings
right.
either. You can save that.
Right. Retirement savings and investments never taxed under the fair tax. The return on the investment is not a problem. You make 5 or 10% interest on that, over a period of a working lifetime, 40 years or something like that. It's all yours because there was no income tax.
Do you think Thomas Jefferson ever envisioned the day when somebody dying would be a taxable event?
Yeah, we've got to get Thomas Jefferson back here with us.
Oh, mercy.
Yeah.
The death of a loved one should not be the tax man should not show up with his hand out at your mother's funeral.
Yeah, that's right. That's awful when you stop to think about it.
It is, and that goes away with the fair tax. Right now, well...
Yeah.
Now imagine that every time you go to the store to buy an item, the price tag reads $19.99, you hand the cashier a $20 bill, and you get back a penny and change. All your life, the price tag on the item is the price tag that you pay at the cash register. Nothing's tacked on. The tax man takes his 23% out of the purchase price. Again, not tacked on afterwards. The only annoying thing about this whole thing is that stupid little trick at Hun to make something seem cheaper by lopping 1 penny off the price.
Yeah. That fools me every time. Instead of $25, it says $24.99. Boy, that just apparently such a problem.
Apparently, the marketing folks had done some research and figure prices with 9s in them make you think you're getting a bargain. I don't know. Okay, now imagine this: there are 4 people in your household, you, your spouse, and 2 rugrats. Their words, not mine. At the beginning of every month, you've been getting a credit to your checking or savings account in the amount of $506 to compensate you for the federal sales taxes that are included in the price of everything that you were expected to buy during that month, right up to the poverty level. This has ensured that you're always able to purchase the basic necessities for your family without paying any tax whatsoever to the federal government. The only thing we need to touch up on this one was the amount there. It says $506 a month to a household of 4. That was when this book was written.
Right, the book was published in 2008. It's 2019. Today's figure is $648 for a family of 4, mom and dad and 2 kids. The prebate is family consumption allowance is $648. So you can see how long ago this book was written.
But the idea, the government knows what the poverty level for all the various household sizes are. So that amount of spending is not taxed under the fair tax. It's real easy to figure out how much fair tax is going to be collected on that level of spending. Just take 23% of it and give it back.
Yep.
That's how the prebate works.
Yep. So
now imagine paying taxes to the federal government being totally voluntary. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
You saved your money after providing the basics for your family. You won't be taxed. You spent your money. You pay your taxes. Your choice.
Yeah, and on top of that, so I mean, you can decide. Okay, let's say it's time to buy another car. You don't have to get a real expensive car. You can get a less expensive car. Depends on your income and your family situation and so forth. Also, I'm surprised that they didn't mention this in the book. You don't have to buy a new car. You can buy a used car and legally avoid the fair tax, because the fair tax is not assessed on used stuff, all right? And the big items are cars and houses. So that family that's trying to get by, just trying to get going, as their kids get older and it's time to buy a house, if they buy a pre-owned house, and almost 90% of the sales in this country are for pre-owned homes, all right? So used house, no fair tax on it. They can save that way. Used car, no fair tax on it, and it's 100% legal.
Yep, I like this one. You never have to fill out a federal tax return.
Oh,
how would you like it if your grandchildren came in, Daddy, what's a tax return? We read about that in history class.
Yeah. Well, dear child, you don't want to know. Please. It was ugly, and I'd rather not. I'm trying to put it out of my mind, But of course, the scenario in the book is that nobody alive has ever known the fair tax, because they grew up with. I'm sorry, they've never known the income tax or the IRS or anything like
hopefully,
that. So.
But nobody alive now has known anything but the income tax. We've had that since 1913. 106 years ago.
And we find a lot of people, because of the length of time the income tax has been around, they kind of cages in their thinking. They can only think in terms of the income tax. It's really hard for them to think outside the box and think about it, living under consumption tax and not having the IRS or the income tax.
Yeah. So you never have to fill out a federal tax return. You never get a letter from the IRS.
Because there is no IRS. Unless you happen to be a retiree with the Iowa Railroad System or something like that.
That's what they said. The IRS agents work for the Iowa Railroad System.
Yeah, so that's about it.
Driving GP40-2s, by the way.
Okay.
No, wait a minute. I got to have some.
I thought when you said GP40, I thought it was some kind of a cable, for the internet or something like that.
No, GP40-2 is a railroad locomotive.
Oh, okay.
Now here's a good one. This gets done behind your back. Your bank will never make a report to the federal government on your deposit or withdrawal habits, with or without your knowledge. A lot of times that happens without your knowledge.
Oh, yeah. And shall we bring up the ugly concept of civil asset forfeiture?
Sure, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. That's what happens right now. If you come into some money and somebody gives you $4,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, all right?
Well, that sounds good.
If an uncle passes away or something like that, if you deposit or withdraw $10,000 or more, you must report it to the IRS. It has to be done.
The bank does.
It must be done. That transaction must be reported. And if you're trying to avoid that $10,000 limit, get around it by doing lesser amounts, like $4,000 or $5,000 at a time, that's called structuring, and that's illegal too. Now, these laws were put in place, I believe, in the 70s for crime-fighting purposes. However, the IRS has used it to go after 100% innocent citizens who are just conducting their daily business. For instance, somebody who runs a convenience store and has a lot of cash sales.
Cash-only restaurants.
Yeah, cash-only restaurants. I mean, there's still a few of those left. So they put the money in, and a teller who doesn't know the person, doesn't know the businessman or something, what's going on, says, oh, they deposited $3,000 or $4,000 the other day, and here's another $2,000, and then there's another $2,000. I'm going to report to the IRS, and the IRS swoops in, doesn't ask you about anything, doesn't accuse you of anything, simply comes in, freezes your bank account, and then informs you about it. All right, then you have to go through hell to try to get that straightened out. All right, that will never happen with the fair tax. That does happen now to hundreds of Americans across the country, and it can ruin their business and their lives. Okay, and worse than that, there was a report that Bob and I talked about sometime, I think it was last year, that a study of the civil asset forfeiture found that 91% of the cases of the IRS doing this were for perfectly innocent people. And that's not because they're incompetent, it's because they designed it that way, because it's too much work to go after the criminals and build a case.
Yeah, go after ones that don't have the resources to fight back.
Yeah. So it's not a good situation. Anyways, that's a little bit of a spin-off from that one, but that's a horrible situation that will go away with the fair tax.
Yeah, the federal government will never surreptitiously go to your bank or poke through your statements for the past 7 years as they do right now.
Yeah.
Though you've never heard of something called the alternative minimum tax, the very sound of that phrase is unsettling to you. I mean, what is that?
Yeah, because that's what they have right now to make sure that if you have a bunch of legal deductions, but the Congress doesn't think you're paying enough taxes, they've got the alternative minimum taxes, which is hammering some people.
Which goes away under the fair tax.
Yep.
That's really nice. Now here's good. You've never had to hide. You've had to hide under your bed to avoid getting a good job with the American economy as strong as it's ever been.
Yeah, well, when there's jobs available, people will get them and so forth, and then there's upward movement and so forth. That's what's happening now with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that has relieved the tension, you might say, the tax tension on businesses. So businesses are expanding, and when businesses expand, they create more jobs and they hire more people, and then those people go out and spend more money. So then more businesses expand and hire more people. It's just this vicious cycle where people keep having more money and more jobs. It's terrible, isn't it?
Imagine living in a place where you have never heard a politician in Washington trying to use the federal tax policy to control your behavior in any way.
Wow, and that's a big one too. I mean, look at, one of the, I'm still looking at congress.gov here, and I mentioned that the amendment to increase the limitation on state deductions and so forth. I mean, Congress gets it, and Bob has mentioned a few of them. The municipal solid waste. We've seen where Congress wants to tell us what kind of toilets and what kind of light bulbs we should be using, and all this stuff.
What kind of bait containers will get a break?
What kind of bait containers? Yeah,
and I don't even fish, but I think that's insane.
and so Congress is constantly delving into how Americans should structure their life, and they use the income tax as a tool to get us to do something that they think is important, but maybe we don't, okay? That's what the ballot box is for. If we want people to structure our lives for us, we'll vote for those people, all right? We don't need the income tax as a tool for them to help structure our lives, because we can't do it by ourselves,
I understand that.
So, anyways.
Imagine living in a place where the 15th of April has always been just another spring day, unless you live in Australia. Then it's fall.
Yeah. So, all right. So, yeah, because there would be there would be no there would be no income tax deadline, no tax return deadline. Okay, so anyways.
Well, I thought of another one. How about a time where the IRS is never used as a political weapon because somebody thinks a certain way?
Oh yeah, and you see that playing out in the media right now. Congress is wanting the IRS, the Treasury Secretary, to give them the Trump's tax returns, and they're saying no, we don't want to. And Bob and I have talked about this in an episode a few weeks ago. Kind of a dangerous situation. So yeah, we don't need the income tax to do all this for us. It's not for us. It's for the power brokers in Congress. It's not a good situation.
So that's not a bad deal. You keep all the money you earn. You get a tax refund every month, family of four, over $600 now. You pay taxes only when you spend money. You can legally avoid them by buying used stuff. Now imagine along comes a politician with a grand new scheme for a new tax system. I'm not sure we got time to dig entirely into this one.
Save that for the next episode.
Save that one for the next time?
Yeah,
okay.
That's where are we? What kind of time are we
We got about
here?
6 minutes left.
Oh, I got about 6 minutes? Okay, well, I got several things that I can bring up here. Anyways,
right.
That's a great part of that last chapter in the Red Book. We strongly recommend, if you want to learn more about the fair tax, pick up the white book first, even though it's, over 10 years old, and read through that, and then read this one. This one came out 3 years later, and it's called FAIRtax The Truth, Answering the Critics, because a number of people came up and said, well, you can't do this, and you forget about that. So Bortz and Linder sat down and wrote a second.
The tax bill in Congress today is exactly the same one that this book describes.
Yeah. I think they've made extremely minor modifications to it.
I think they shrunk the font on it, so now it's 131 pages instead of 133.
Yeah. So, anyways. Okay, well, I want to make sure that I include a small segment here for the Grassroots Corner. Jim Bennett is a board member with the AFFT, Americans for Fair Taxation. That's our national group. And in FAIRtax Friday, which comes out every Friday, funny thing about that, FAIRtax Friday. If you're not getting FAIRtax Friday in your email inbox, go to fairtax.org and sign up, put in your name and address and so forth, and your email address. They promise they never share your information with any other organizations. They jealously guard your information in there, so you won't get spammed by signing up and helping out the FAIRtax. All right, but Jim, since he retired last year, he's been doing this Grassroots Corner, and this one I'm going to read a small section of it. You've heard the adage, when one door closes, another one opens. That's exactly what happened to the FAIRtax movement when a source of funding ended abruptly and unexpectedly. Larry Ward, president of Political Media and a friend of the FAIRtax, who has helped us out over the years, came through with a sweetheart deal that made up for the funding shortfall. Larry also will give us an improved membership management platform. Now that's called a customer relations platform. It's software and personnel. It's a way of managing the database. AFFT had contracted with a group called Your Membership, and although the people that were managing that were pretty good, the system itself left something to be desired. So they're going to Political Media, said we need a customer relations management platform to communicate with and manage our FAIRtax support base. That's very important. I mean, FAIRtax Fridays are mailed out via this database, and so the customer relations manager, that's the software that makes sure that when Steve Hayes writes up his weekly chairman's report, and Ron Malero has a portion of that about the FAIRtax Guys and a few other things, the booklet, America's Big Solution, and then Jim also does his Grassroots Corner. That goes to our customer relations manager, and it goes out to everybody. They just started this last week, and it's slowly I started getting mine on a regular basis now on Friday. It's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I used to get mine on Saturday, but now it comes on Friday.
Yeah, I think it's a better system. So if you have something that you want to report to Jim Bennett, if you're doing something about volunteer work with the FAIRtax, or you have a question on how you can do this, how you can help, jim.bennett@fairtax.org. jim.bennett@fairtax.org. 2 N's and 2 T's in Bennett. So, and you'll see it down below here.
Okay, we're got about 2 minutes left here, so if you want some logo store stuff, you better get with it.
Yep. There's all kinds of things in the logo store. I've showed you this before.
I like that. That's really cool, with a zippered top in the whole 9 yards.
Yep, that's a very nice tote bag. There are all kinds of things. These information cards, all right, we're renewing these. We're going to write them up and maybe change the format, but they got basic information about the FAIRtax. The website's on the back, so you can get more information. Buy a bunch of these, and when somebody asks you about the FAIRtax, you can give them these. And as I already showed you, the prebate, we nickname it the prebate card. All right, basic information of the FAIRtax on the one side and the prebate schedule. People love to see how much their family's going to get with the prebate schedule. Very handy, fits in your pocket. Okay, there are pins. All right, my wife always has these strapped, attached to the strap of her purse. The hats, shirts, jackets, umbrellas, tote bags. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Go to FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. FAIRtaxLogoStore.org. order some things. Now, we're not getting rich off of this. In fact, actually, it's an expense. Florida FAIRtax takes care of that store, and it is an expense for us, but it's a way to physically, that you can demonstrate your support for the fair tax by wearing a hat or a shirt or a button, or by passing out these cards to your friends, okay? So, FairtaxLogoStore.org.
Okay,
Very
one
good.
more thing real quick. Again, now that we're no longer with Big Daddy Studios, we're no longer locked into that 11:30 a.m. Wednesday time slot for our initial live streaming, and we were still soliciting some income would work too, some input on when would be the best time to stream these things live, when we could get more people online as we're streaming, and we could talk to them on our live comments, even though the show's pre-recorded. What would be a good time would you like to be available to watch the original live stream? And we'll try to can't help everybody, but we'll try to accommodate as many as we can on that. And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of FairtaX Power Radio. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FairtaX Guys, reminding you again that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
The FAIRtax is a tax replacement plan where we take all the federal income taxes, including corporate, personal, gift, and estate taxes, and replace them with one national consumption tax on new purchases, above the poverty level only. This form of consumption tax comes with no exceptions and is progressive, not regressive. The poor are not paying more, and the rich are not paying less. What makes it progressive is that all Americans are untaxed up to the poverty level via the prebate, much like your standard tax deduction. The taxes are collected by retail businesses at state level, so the system is more accountable. The IRS is done away with, and you have control over your money and what the overall tax rate your household pays. The fair tax is revenue neutral, so the government receives the same amount of money as they do now, and it's fair because you decide what's fair, not them. To learn more, visit Fairtax.org and be sure to like us on social media to help educate your friends and spread the word.